It's like they have gun nipples in their toe spikes?
Yes,
Okay.
gun nipples in their toe spikes. Nice.
All right, Klingons. I see you.
Captain's Pod, Stardate 805523.3. Welcome aboard the Starship's Enterprise, and thank you for joining us as we take a brief shore leave from the world of CinemaSins to explore the universe of Star Trek. I'm your Captain Ian Whittington, and with me as always, she can make a deadly weapon from her belt, shoes, and decorative braces. It's Ambassador Deneé.
Hello! I can what?
You can make a deadly weapon out of the things currently on your person. Yes, you are wearing decorative braces.
Oh.
Bracers, not braces.
Okay,
Bracers.
because those are different.
Those are different, very different, yeah.
There's bracers, braces, bracelets. I wasn't quite sure.
And braziers. Braziers? Braziers? Braziers. Braziers.
So I have shoes, bracers, and what else?
I think I said belt. Hang on, let me get my notes back up.
You get rid of them so fast.
Belt, shoes, and I am at the minute I don't have multi-screens. I have one laptop that I'm going backwards and forwards from. So yeah, it's belt, shoes, and decorative braces.
And that's how I can
And you
kill
can make
someone?
a deadly weapon.
Oh yeah,
that's how you're going to kill them.
All I really need is this finger.
And a look. Sometimes it's just a look.
Yeah, sometimes it's just a look.
Well, welcome back to Season 8 of Captain's Pod, where we will continue to dive in to some episodes of TNG. And by request, the Ambassador's request, we're going to be doing a Worf episode, so you get some Worfy goodness. Now, we kind of noodled maybe going into a bit of Deep Space Nine, but ultimately, I thought the best place to start is kind of at the beginning with the first ever Worf-centric episode. This is the first episode that was kind of dedicated to Worf and Klingons in TNG, and it is Season 1, Episode 20, Heart of Glory.
I think that's a great place to start, especially because it's a bit like a bookend. We just saw what Worf looks like as this aged pacifist warrior with this snarky relationship with his friends, although I don't know that he's snarky as much as the Klingon like banter is, just sort of.
Does he realize he's being snarky, or is it just him?
So, like what he has evolved into and then, resurged as in this series. So then to kind of go all the way back to the beginning, maybe not like his first time on screen, but the first time that the writers decided to explore his story a little more for the audience. I think that's a really great place to start. But I was excited about some Deep Space Nine. So maybe, though, everybody just take a deep breath. Maybe I'll just watch in my free time,
Free time? What's that? What is that? So we definitely will be doing some Deep Space Nine without a doubt, and there were some awesome episode suggestions like Way of the Warrior. You have been cordially invited. Looking for Pach in all the wrong places. Tons of great Worf Deep Space Nine suggestions, but it's really the perfect time to go back to the very, very beginnings instead of getting very, very deep into DS9. So maybe next week we'll do some DS9 stuff. But the task that they kind of had with this episode was to reinvent and reintroduce the Klingons from the slightly problematic bad guy of TOS, where the makeup, there was some like brown face and black face involved. They had some problematic kind of origins, and just reinventing this really cool, iconic bad guy and using Worf as a bit of a vessel to do it as well. So I'm really excited to get your views on that as well and see how much of like Klingon stuff seems familiar to you and just seeing the origins of it. I think that's going to be really fun.
I hope to not disappoint, but as always, I am terrified of pissing off any fans.
I don't think you piss off any fans. I think I probably do by picking the wrong episodes. But let's have one big prediction for the episode and then one oddly specific prediction for Heart of Glory.
Big prediction. Worf talks about battle. Specific prediction. Worf says he says, "I do not understand." That's a specific quote.
I like it. I can't answer that right now. I can't remember. I love it. Okay, with that, let's head over to the holodeck to watch the episode, and we'll see you all in 10 forward. 2 to beam out. Welcome to 10 Forward, the part of the show where we grab a drink from the replicator and share our immediate thoughts and feelings on the episode we just watched. Most important question first, what is your beverage of choice?
I would like apple juice from the farming colony on Galt.
Gold, nice.
Mhm.
Very, very nice.
Yes,
Yep.
I hear it's spicy,
Mm-hmm.
It's intense and it gets in your blood.
Slightly Russian as well, because Worf's parents are Russian. So there's just like a little bit of extra spice in there.
Vodka?
Yeah, there's vodka in your apple juice. Yeah, that's what it is. Yeah.
I'd like vodka apple juice, please, aka just a martini.
Yep. No, that's it. You want an appletini?
I want an
Klingons
appletini.
famous for drinking appletinis.
But I want it
drink
in
of
like a
choice.
big horn glass that has like some smoke coming out of the top, so it looks really badass, but in actuality, it's super lame.
It's really, really sweet. They do that a lot. They'll just like, to make a drink look alien, they'll just have smoke pouring out of it. I want one of those like crab claws that the Klingons replicated. As soon as they walked into their quarters, we're like, food buffet now.
Oh yeah. They had a full-on snack bar.
Yeah, and like some tea of some sort, which was yummy. Well, hey, that was the first episode with a kind of Worf taking the lead. Give us a synopsis.
Yeah, so in this episode, our crew is kind of called into this territory that could have bad guys of like different kinds of bad guys, and they think they're on a rescue mission. And the neutral zone. And they end up thinking that they've rescued a few Klingons, but it turns out the Klingons actually are trying to become like warrior-esque again and get out of this whole peaceful treaty thing. And so they are escapees, and they're criminals, and they encounter Worf, who is able to connect with them on some sort of deep and meaningful level.
Genetic level.
Yeah, there's a part of his race makeup that includes just this call to war and this almost, I don't know, poetic approach to existence.
It is, isn't it?
He really vibes with these guys. At the same time, never wavers with his devotion to Starfleet. And when the Klingons come to get the criminals, I think the show wants us to believe that there's a chance that Worf will join them, but that's never going to happen. The quote-unquote bad guy Klingons fight their way to their death so that they can have their warrior death, and Worf firmly plants himself onto the bridge of the ship, and that is this episode. That's pretty good.
So, that was a very sensible synopsis. I'm disappointed. So, overall, what did you think of the episode? Did you like it? How was it? Did it get your Worf buzz going? How did it hit you?
I think I have to remember that probably at this time for Star Trek, the Klingon race is a race that's been explored as being the bad guys, right?
The villains, for sure. 100%.
Is this kind of also not just Worf's backstory and us trying to resonate with him as a character, but is this also the franchise's attempt at humanizing the Klingons a little bit too?
Interesting.
I don't know if humanize is the right word. I don't know. Like we say humanize, but humans are awful. So
yeah, you accidentally quoted The Undiscovered Country.
Oh no.
Because we've mentioned this on the pod before. They're having dinner with the Klingons, and Dr. McCoy is like, they're talking about how they want to live their lives. And Dr. McCoy is like, where's your humanity? And they're just like, you dicks, we're Klingons.
Dicks.
We don't have any humanity. But you're right. It is this overlay that Starfleet in particular.
Just make them relatable somehow.
And give them some extra depth and character, and they're not just the one note bad guys. Because in TOS, it was just, oh shit, the Klingons are here, they're gonna make slaves out of everybody, literally, or they're going to murder everyone. It's one of the two. It was very rare that they ever teamed up.
So is this then they're also one of the first, or if not the first attempt at giving us more of their...
Yep.
It really is.
Very much. This is the first attempt to give us more, like, kind of... So TNG, probably one of the best things TNG did was flesh out the Klingons and give us their backstory, their homeworld, their culture, the politics. Everything we know and think about Klingons came from TNG. And it starts with this episode. Ronald D. Moore is really the person that kicked it off a couple of seasons from now. And he was kind of the Klingon guy. He was like, you were gonna get into the nitty-gritty and write the Klingon Bible, essentially. But this is the first step. This is the first step of they have their own culture. It's going to be different to ours. Here's what it is. And there's this truce between the Klingons and the Federation that's been around for, I think,
enough.
80 years now.
Mm-hmm.
So they're at peace, and we don't have to worry about them being the bad guy. And here's who they are. It's one of my favorite things. I love it.
I feel like as time goes on and as TNG goes on, that the cadence of information about Worf's history and Klingons, not even Worf's history from childhood, Worf's approach, his philosophy, and how that overlays with Klingon philosophy and is both the same and different at the same time. Like his approach is a warrior's approach, like he mentions in this episode, from the inside out. So I feel like as the show goes on, it seems like this was a very casual beginning of the conversation. Like it was as if watching just people talk. Whereas when the Klingons are in other content that I don't remember exactly, but it felt way more intense.
Way more antagonistic as well.
Yeah. So this approach, like in bringing the conversations between the criminals and Worf, felt really casual. I don't want to use the same words over and over again, but that's the best way to describe it.
It feels like he was hanging out with buddies that he hasn't seen in a few years.
Alarmingly normal rather than this intensity that I feel like I was expecting. So I don't know if that's because this was the first go at it and then they amp up some of the intensity and details about their warrior life later as the details of the Klingon race are kind of fleshed out and explored, which is fine. But I kind of think I expected something a little bit more
fiery.
Yeah.
Especially with like the tension at the very beginning when Worf is like his butt puckers.
You stole my line.
Shall we redo it so you can say it?
No. I think everyone who listens to this show knows that you steal chat's lines all the time, and now they know that you steal mine too. Yes, we watched a particular part, and when the landing party or the search party, the rescue party that was on the barge first says it's Klingons and it zooms in on Worf, like I said, we just watched Worf's butt pucker and we both laughed.
Because we saw like his ridges, like you can always see his ridges puckering as well.
Mm-hmm.
And then it's just a super casual like conversation after tea. So I've seen this episode many times, and I love this episode. I think it's a really, really great one. I've seen it so many times, and I did struggle to reconcile that as well. Like Worf, considering he's somebody that hasn't been around Klingons, in his own words, hardly at all for his entire life, he's super chill and confident with them. And over time, I've wondered if that's just a Klingon thing. If like he's deliberately trying to keep his shit together and just like play it cool. Don't show that you're nervous. Yeah, or just naturally, it's part of him. It's like, these are new people to me, but like, I'm going to keep my shit together.
The idea that the Klingon race just lacks fear.
Yeah, and they don't look at death the same way that we do.
Yeah, and his approach to every scenario is, I'm not afraid. I'm going to deal with this, and I'm either going to die or I'm not going to die. And whether that's a dinner party or, if it's a dinner party or a war, they don't care which one it is. As long as it suits their thread of truth for them. And like Worf is an individual, and then there's like the group of Klingons. So I was confused, to your point also, that if this is Worf's first time really interacting with his race, he seemed to already have quite a lot of knowledge. And so it made me wonder if more comes out later, because we kind of skipped over like Worf's story is essentially before the age of inclusion, which was apparently very young. He was rescued by a human and raised on a farming colony, along with like another foster brother, and then eventually joined Starfleet. So there is this part from Starfleet until now that maybe there's more that happens where Worf like learns more about Klingons and has a deeper understanding of what makes him him. But there's like this moment where the criminal guys are talking to him and almost like calling out what's in his soul. Like they didn't understand the call of the the hunter, and they're like kind of like getting into his psyche
Super
and
poetic,
into his
yeah.
blood, and Worf is standing there just being read like a book, and it was pretty intense. And I kept thinking, he's just keeping up with these guys so well. He's not confused. He's like able to just immediately turn around and kind of have his own response, very Klingon, his own Klingon way. So it's wild to think about how much could be genetic rather than circumstantial based on how he was raised. Because you would think he'd be pretty human, but he's a pretty Klingon human. Like, he's a pretty Klingon guy.
That nature versus nurture thing, isn't it? So it's very clearly that there is a lot of nature in Klingons where their brains are just wired to have this hunter instinct and to have this kind of bloodlust thing for battle and for glory and whatever. It is a little bit inconsistent, and I forgive them this because this is back in the day where they didn't realize they were probably going to have a 35-year legacy with this character. But especially in later seasons, like seasons 3, 4, 5 onwards, Worf is like super into his Klingon culture.
Yeah,
and
that's what I remember.
So much. And he's teaching Alexander. And when he's on Deep Space Nine, he acts as if he's been around Klingons his whole life. And I always wanted him to act a little bit more human. And I think it's implied that his parents encouraged him to learn a lot about the Klingon race. And I think he did spend some time on the Klingon homeworld when he was younger, but not very much at all. So when he says hardly any time, that could still be a year. Because I guess a year is still hardly any time compared to 30 years.
Right. And also he knows his like house, because later on he's like, I'm Worf, son of, and he kind of goes through his lineage as well. And I don't know if that's his son of his colony, does he say, when he does that, is he saying that because of his Klingon house, or is he calling out his human father?
So the son of Moog thing, that's his father, his Klingon father. The House of Martok is a house that adopts him during Deep Space Nine. So Klingon general adopts him because he doesn't technically have a house. And then his parents are the Rashenkos. So I can't remember if I think he mentions them, but he very much, when he's listing his names, it's all the Klingon stuff. So he's very much in that, which I did always think was strange, considering most of his life is among humans.
I wonder if, and I'm sure there is, fandom or officials who have done this character study on Worf and have written in such a way where the things we see on TNG, Deep Space Nine, etc., have more backstory. This is the perfect example of a character that I would read more about to understand how Worf got to this point where during this episode, it just, if this is his first time to meet other Klingons, I would just have expected there to be, I don't know, maybe it's perfect as is. I don't know, because
it should be a bigger deal. Yeah.
Well, but that's the human in me going, wouldn't there be more emotion? And that's racist.
Yeah, it's true.
You know, because
we're judging him by human standards. Yeah.
And I guess this episode didn't really teach me a lot about that part of them, but it did do a really great job, I think, of sprinkling in some of their rites, rituals, like mentality, the things that are designed inside of them, but then also things that are based on who you are. Like there's a whole peaceful Klingon group that has found a way to have peace with, you know, the Federation or whatever. And then you've got rogue guys that still have a thread of the same thing. And Worf himself, who's like, you got to let them die a warrior's death, guys. It's like, okay, that really still matters to Worf. Somehow that's an important part of what he believes. It's a belief system for him.
These threads that carry on through all of the other Klingon episodes come pretty much from this episode. Like it starts here, whether it was deliberate or not, whether they knew how much they would be returning to the Klingons in the future. It's still, so much of it is based on what Worf says in this episode. Yeah, about dying with honor, having to battle how peace is crippling the Klingons. It's all themes that come back again, which is why I thought it's a good place to start, because so many seeds are picked up in this episode.
Yeah, I definitely think this is a good episode to start, to start with. I think that it does a good job of starting with the crew on what you assume is going to be kind of like a normal search and rescue episode, and then it shifts into Klingon territory, and then the majority of the episode is spent sort of watching how Worf and the crew and the people on the ship in general respond to this race that's known to be very, warrior-esque. And winks and nods at how dangerous they are in some ways. And I guess racism in others, because if they're supposed to be at peace, there's some people who respond by grabbing their children and like, looking shocked and scared. So after 80 years, there's still people that are like not okay with just seeing some Klingons on board.
I guess, and I don't think I don't think that part is racism so much as this is like a hostile situation. And clearly, like, I think if anybody picked up my kid, if I had one, I would be like, hey, put my kid down.
I'm not talking about when he takes the kid. It's before that, when they first come on the ship and they don't know that they're criminals yet. When they're walking through the Enterprise, there's a family, there's a mother with a couple of children who grab them and protect them as they walk by.
Oh, okay. No, I remember that now. Yeah. No, I guess it's still, even though there's a truce between them, it's not often that you see a Klingon. So yeah,
I guess that's true.
But that instinct, you're right, is probably an unfair one. Get your kids into school.
But also it makes sense. I mean, you're creating an episode about the big bads of the previous TOS, so
I'm trying to neuter them a little bit as well.
Yeah, you're wanting someone that's tuning in who maybe doesn't know them to still have that feeling of the gravity of these characters that are not just KISS concert goers gone wrong. They're like,
exactly,
fucking dangerous.
They're intense.
Because they really do look like they just got back from a KISS concert.
They really do. They're angry armadillos. I really love the beginning of this episode, and I miss episodes that kick off like this. It's just immediate, like, there's a battle that's happened in the neutral zone. Warp 9, let's get us there. Could it be the Ferengis? Is it the Romulans? What's going on? Let's go! And it's just the pacing of this first, 20 minutes is so good. And it's 2 episodes in one, because you've got, the getting on board the freighter, the escape, the climax, it blowing up, getting them off of the freighter, getting them back to the ship, and then it's just knee deep into mythology and lore, and then trying to blow up the ship and the resolution at the end. It's just such a journey of an episode that for me feels like really well paced. Did it feel jarring to you, or were you there for it?
No, I loved it. And this is an episode that for me went really fast. I didn't realize that the time had passed, which is it always feels nice when you're not like, okie dokie, where are we going with this? The first part, I did find myself going, I thought this was a Worf episode, but the only reason that I thought that is because we're doing this show. So if I had just picked this episode, I wouldn't have known that this was a Worf central episode until we get to the second, the latter 2/3 of this particular one. The other interesting thing about the first part of this, I'm just gonna call the first third, because I'm just saying numbers and stuff right now, is that we got to see Geordi's visor in this really interesting way. And I really enjoyed the look, the search through this
interpretation
ship for a few reasons. I really felt like the camera work in this one was really delightful to watch. They play around with the angles really nicely in this episode. They do that to build tension, but it was like there was this one moment they kind of get close to the room that was filled with smoke.
The engineering room, and it's got the bright light, and they're like kind of just their silhouettes are against the white light of the engine room. Yeah, I love that shot.
Yeah, this is a really pretty episode. Before going into that room, there's like a kind of a big wall of machinery that they have to kind of circle around before entering into that bright room, and Data and Riker go around one side and Geordi comes around towards the camera. And I'd already had 5 or 6 things I wrote down about camera angles at that point, but it just, I don't know, there was like this deliberateness with showing these different angles and staying with particular characters, and you're on the move in this ship that needs to be explored. It's the quintessential ship where something has gone wrong and so tubes are hanging from everywhere.
There's rocks on the ground.
Just
girders everywhere. Rebar just coming out of walls.
I firmly believe now that, like, our cars, if we're in an accident, deploy airbags. Spaceships deploy tubes. Just upon impact, just poof, and then just shit flies out everywhere. Yeah, it looks really cool. But yeah, just the way that the camera kind of like followed with Riker, and it had this action to it that I don't remember really paying too much attention to. And maybe it was because of all the smoke that was filling, and I don't know, it was just really neat. Also, they did a great job of building tension by dropping us directly into this moment. There was no like captain's narration before the first commercial break, and then at the commercial break is when Picard's log comes in, and we kind of hit more into our normal pace of what's going on. So that was also pretty clever.
It's a really fun opening, and I can just imagine watching this for the first time, and just I'm thinking about Strange New Worlds, and it's like, yeah, let's go, let's get into some action. And considering this is a Worf episode, they do some really bold, like, kind of sprinkling. So Geordie's eyesight is obviously one of them, giving us an opportunity to see things how Geordie sees, and just some really fun, quirky moments where is that how you see Data? I was like, yeah, he's an android.
Doesn't everybody
He's
have
got a halo around him?
He's got an aura, yeah, of course.
It's so fun. That's just totally normal to him.
And we also get to do that with Data a little bit, recognizing that because he's an android, he can go into the hotter, more intense places, and he's calculating danger. And so his role in these missions is more firmly becoming, this is what we depend on Data to give us. This is the information we depend on Geordie to give us. And so to try to like visually show us the visor and then also give, Data something to do in that away mission. I don't know what Riker really did except for almost blow everything up by shooting off a phaser, but
This is a classic Riker thing of, shall we hit it with phasers? Sir, that will destroy everything. Sir, please don't do that. It's one of my favorite things about TNG is the makeup of the away missions and the away teams are always so thoughtful. 9 times out of 10, the person who has a function is serving that function really, really well and doing the thing they're supposed to be doing. And it's the visual acuity sensor transmitter thing that Geordie has on his visor. I don't know if this was deliberate or not, but we never see it again. They never use that shit.
Well, it probably, let's think about this, was probably pretty expensive to produce.
Yeah, and complicated. I bet it was, especially like at the time. And
I was fascinated by it.
Me too. Like all of the colors and just trying to interpret it is so fun.
How much Data didn't look like Data? And how much Riker didn't look like Riker? Almost
I think
as
they
if
were
they
different
had
actors.
Yes, and that was so clever because all of the image is just so different, and I'm sure that they would do that very differently now. This had that delayed kind of like hazy sort of, I don't know what, phasing in and out
thing.
Adding in the Technicolor. It was a lot, but then at the same time, that's what they were trying to convey.
Mm-hmm. And maybe it probably was done way, way, way in post-production, and maybe they couldn't get Frakes and Spiner back to film that part.
Possibly.
So maybe it is different people, and that's why they look so different as well. But yeah, I love it so much.
I love the idea that because of all of the information coming in, that they just physically can appear different, because maybe when Data turns to look at him, the nose shifts in these phases, so he'll never look like our Data.
Yeah, because it's a computer interpreting what is actually there. It's not actually Geordie's eyes. Yeah.
And it also gives more weight when Geordie has those moments throughout all of TNG where he gets to see things that normally you wouldn't see. For example, problems with the metal because there's going to be a hull breach, or just these other things. Fun. Yeah.
And I wonder if it was never intended to be used again. It was just, here's a way for the audience to visualize what we're saying when Geordie is saying that he's picking up on metallurgical anomalies and things like that. Here's just a thing for the audience to think about, even if we never come to it again. It is revisited in a different episode, but in a different way, which is really, they kind of do the reverse. They keep Geordie on the ship and use his visor to pilot a robot, and then the robot is in all of these dangerous situations so that Geordie doesn't have to be. So that's really that's an interesting kind of twist on the visor. But it's just a fun thing to slip into this episode, just as an aside almost. It has nothing to do with the plot. It's just, here's how Geordie looks. This is how Geordie looks at things.
I thought it was clever. It had something for everyone. And I just continue to be impressed with they really understood, the writers really understand the importance that each character only has such a short amount of time to deliver to an audience visually, audibly, and then in their written words, what their character is made out of. And so
Mhm.
when we do a hyper focus onto a character, it obviously amplifies. We get to kind of sink into it a little bit more. But the beginning of this episode, I wouldn't have, if not knowing we were going to be focusing on Worf, one of the first moments I have, I was like, yeah, that's so Worf, is when they are scanning and they realize that there was a battle. And someone says there was a disturbance in the neutral zone, and he goes, a battle. And he was super excited about it. Like, yes, like, let's fucking go check out the battle. But it wasn't like he was smiling. It's just, he was intensely like, I know, he instinctively was like, yes, a battle. And that's the kind of stuff that writers and actors and the directors expertly do in certain environments. And I feel like TNG, Star Trek in general, has kind of consistently been one of those where when a character's on screen, you really learn more about their race, their history, their motivation on these tiny little clues. And so to zoom on his face on battle, just the word battle, you're like, this character is all about battle. And then we get to explore that. And so for them to do that just a little bit with Geordi, like this character has this visor. We're going to zoom in on that. This character is an android with super strength. We're going to zoom in on that. To have such a short amount of time to do that and to do it well is, I think, one of the reasons I just instinctively like this show.
Yeah, it's really kind to the audience. It's cleverly informative without being, here's the character bio of what this person does. It's putting the characters as forward as the adventure of the week, which is just a really clever balance. The other thing that they decide to do is to name drop the Romulans. So, unless I'm mistaken, this is the first time the Romulans are mentioned in TNG as well. So, it's obviously the Romulans and the Ferengi are used as a misdirect so that we don't think it's the Klingons that are going to be there and we get the shocking reveal. But yeah, it's Riker's just like, oof, I wish it wasn't the Romulans. This is terrifying. So, it's just a little name drop for stuff that happens later in the season as well. So, it's just one of the... It's an early example of weaving more of the universe together as well, and more of when the Romulans are mentioned, when the Romulans turn up in later episodes, you already know that there's this tension around it and that they're the big bads.
I also like that this episode puts Picard into the position of discoverer. He gets to discover how Geordi operates, and he gets to discover something important about Worf. So we really relate to Picard in this episode in a unique way.
He's like a child, isn't he? It's so fun.
And he
and he's just like the audience.
Yeah, it had this. This is Stewart getting into Picard skin.
This could be Patrick Stewart asking the questions as much as it is Picard.
And it was delightful to watch because he is so excited to see what Geordi sees and learn and explore. And then he is so, what's the word? Just, he has this archaeologist sort of vibe, right? Like he collects things and he really respects sort of the history of things. It's almost like he knows that what he's seeing Worf do in this episode, how he's interacting, the rituals that he's seeing, that it's something valuable and sacred.
And he's super privileged to be watching
it. Well, there's a moment when he is reflecting back on the bridge after he initially sees the death cry. It's the death ritual, or I don't remember what they call it. After
it's the death rite, I think. I can't remember.
Yeah, the Klingon death ritual, which Data is saying it's the first time to have a look at the Klingon death ritual, and it means like the whole beware dead people, a warrior is coming, that kind of a thing. But the way that Picard is talking to the bridge about his own experience being in the room observing it was really, like, I don't know, it was just really interesting to me.
It is. It's like, gather around, listen, look what I just saw. And it's like, this is why the ship is out there, to discover this new stuff. And it's the purpose of their mission. So it's a really nice detail to include that conversation of, this is what I just saw, this is what they'd be talking about. I love that.
And then at the very end, to kind of put an arc to it, when Worf ends up killing the final warrior criminal on board, Picard instinctively has Tasha wait to go and make sure he's dead. And here comes Worf, opens up his eyes and does the same ritual again because he knew. But then the camera moves to Picard, who is just fascinated.
Yeah.
But the expression
really nice camera move.
Yeah, the expression on his face is like, I don't know. Everyone can interpret things differently. How I interpreted it, though, was it was just this deep respect and intense curiosity. Like, I'm seeing something that I don't understand, but it's so important. And
I've seen it twice in one day.
yeah.
I kind of like, there's a bit of Picard that I'm like, I bet he wanted to go and join him. Like, to go and do the scream with Worf so that he's not alone.
Yeah,
it's a really, really nice touch to put Picard in the position of anthropologist, which he is. He's an amateur archaeologist, and just how much this would fascinate him, and why he's a great choice to be a captain in Starfleet. And that's that bit of Star Trek that I really, really miss, and why Strange New Worlds is so incredible. Because I get that from Captain Pike, I get that from Anson Mount, and just his wonder of, I fucking love this job. Like, we're out here doing some shit. I love it.
There's also fun things that maybe you get to listen to. There's some really fun dialogue in this. Not obviously there's a rich conversation happening amongst the Klingons because they're speaking in their cadence and they're using these very eloquent Q-esque ways of describing.
Yeah, super eloquent.
It's a very like warrior meets Shakespeare vibe.
It kind of is.
Which I love.
Because it's not the stereotype of, well, you're cavemen, like you're just barbarians, you can't be well spoken. It's one of my favorite things about Klingons when they do this is to make them very eloquent and singing songs about glory and victory, and not just must hit people.
Oh, right. And it's like when the criminal realizes that Worf isn't going to join him, he's like, man, my words were like sand to you. And there's this episode has stuff that if I was to go back and pause it and think about what they just said, there is something to ponder. But there's also moments when they just use it and maybe unwittingly gave me something to think about. And that also happened at the beginning of the episode when they're exploring and Data's like, there is no distinguishable, less dangerous way to go here. Yeah. They're all dangerous. And I just kind of had this moment where I was like, man, that's sort of like life, right? We kind of sometimes like every single thing you do has its own set of dangers. You just kind of have to pick a path and go on it.
Fingers crossed.
And that I started to write down just some thoughts that I've sort of had in that area, because just in my personal life, I'm making decisions and choices all the time, especially with a kid where I'm making decisions for her and everything feels so major. And I'm like, oh, I've got to do all this research to figure out which way to go. It's weird because in this very throwaway moment, I'm like, that's so true, Data.
It's so deep.
Everything is dangerous. There is no significant difference sometimes.
Life is an away mission. You gotta move the right tube out of the way and hope a girder doesn't fall on you.
Trust that the people that are going with you, one of them is going to see that fucking fissure, you know?
Yeah, someone's going to tell Riker to not phaser the thing that's going to blow everyone up.
Yeah, exactly.
That's amazing.
And then you turn around and there's actual like poetic stuff that I could just eat up, because the Klingon conversations are really interesting and so fast paced. Like they just talk to us like we knew everything already, and I love that.
I do love it because it feels authentic. It feels they're not talking to the camera; they're talking to each other as their people. So when he says the right of inclusion, and we don't know what the right of inclusion is. Full disclosure, Deneé, I don't remember it ever getting mentioned again. There's the right of the right of inclusion.
Oh, okay.
So there's the right of there's the right of ascension, which is basically when you stop being a child and become a man. But the right of inclusion or occlusion, I don't remember it coming up again. And I'm sure there's people that have written about it, but all we know is that the other Klingon is like, that young. And that's all we need to know, is that Worf was fucking young when he was rescued by humans. So there's basically nothing Klingon about him. But the other thing I love about this episode, and it is probably a little bit confusing, is that it isn't antagonistic with Worf. And so he says, are you mocking me? And eventually the other Klingon is like, I'm not mocking you, I salute you. Like, this is fucking hard. You are like a beast that is living among humans that do not understand you and will try to make you humans, and you're human and you're dealing with it so well. I love that respect. And the respect of the Klingon captain that's coming to arrest the feral Klingons. He is super respectful as well. It's like, you were raised by humans, but I'm not going to poo on you. I'm not going to shit on you for that. Like, you're speaking from your heart as a Klingon, and I get it. I respect it. I love that so much. It's not this Worf is shuns, let's feel sorry for him. it's just a really interesting angle, like respectful angle to take. It's one of my favorite things about the episode that I wasn't expecting, like knowing what this episode is, like knowing it's Worf's first interaction with his people in a long time.
It makes me want to watch every Worf episode.
Hey, I mean, there's plenty of them.
Am I going to be watching Star Trek forever now?
Yeah. This isn't even my favorite Worf episode. There are some they get really deep on his backstory, which I freaking love. Probably more so than any other character. I think Worf gets the most backstory fleshed out.
That makes me happy. And it also makes me happy, like at the end of the episode, when there's an open invitation from the Klingon vessel for Worf to join them because they can see the benefit with him. And everyone just kind of turns and looks at Worf after the communication ends. And I got the impression, my interpretation was that they've all heard him scream this scream. They know that this was a really intense experience. There's history with the Klingons. And they're watching this person and wondering, I wonder how he feels, or I wonder what he's thinking. And he's turns around and he's like, I'm good where I'm at, in his Worf way of saying that. And Picard says, we wouldn't be the same without you. And the shot ends with him standing at attention. And I'm just like, fuck yeah. And I don't know why. I got so excited because I fucking love Worf. And this just sort of set him firmly in place, and it gave him power over his story. And
it kind of feels like Michael Dorn standing there at the end, just like, that's me, I got my episode. Because he's just he's a recurring character at the minute. He's not a series regular. And I think at this point they knew that Denise Crosby, Tasha, was leaving. So maybe that's why this episode exists. I didn't actually dig into that. But
that's interesting.
I think they maybe knew at this point that Worf was going to be stepping into that security role and becoming a series regular.
Well, what a smart thing to do then, to give him so much of a feeling of protection, security, a place trusted. I mean, Picard at one point even says Worf can deal with anything that might arise, and I really loved that. So this is it's a good episode, for them to see, or for them being the audience to see.
Yeah, I love it. There's a couple of other little things. The poor Talarians. So it's a Talarian freighter. And the Talarians are this race that we do get to meet, but they're often the throwaway species. So you know how like angels are described in the Bible? It's a similar, if you actually got that picture together, they would be these hideous like amalgamation creations of like terrifying
eyeballs,
descriptions.
wings.
Yeah. The Talarians are the same thing. Sometimes they have 2 arms, sometimes they have 3 arms. Sometimes they're the victim of this hideous plague that caused them to go extinct 100 years ago. Sometimes they're just usual humanoids. They're just like Talarians are the placeholder name when they couldn't think of what species to come up with. So it's really just funny. I always have to laugh when the Talarians are mentioned, because I'm like, well, which Talarians are we talking about? Because there's like 10 different stories about them now. That's always really fun. And I don't know if you saw me giggle, but I'm just a sucker for a failing transporter beam as well. So when they're trying to get them off of the freighter and the transporter beam fails, I love that. I think I could have an entire episode of the different failing transporter beam noises where it kind of goes and then just like fizzles out and just fades and sounds a bit funky. It gets me every time. And I love that tension of seeing the ship explode and then the transporter beam dematerializes. It gets me every time. I'm like, oh, they're dead. Oh no, transporters exist.
Yep. It didn't happen that way, but
But it's so fun. I love it.
Something clever that I thought of as Worf is dining with the criminals before knowing that they're criminal, that gives you a confidence that he is Starfleet through and through, is that he doesn't dine with them. What did you think about that? Like, when it cuts back to them after the commercial break.
I'm still on duty.
I don't know if it was still on duty or just like, I'm not participating in whatever you're doing. I don't know who you are yet.
Yeah, I got the vibe that he's like intently observing them. And I love that he's kind of got his fingers crossed and like pressed against his nose. It's like very formal. And I don't know if the more I think about it, the more I think it's Worf like overplaying his hand. Like, I think inside he is very curious, but he doesn't want to show that at all. And he wants to be extremely confident and not leave himself open to attack or hesitancy at all, because the Klingons will eat him alive if he shows anything other than complete confidence. So whether he's really feeling that or not, I
Yeah.
love what he presents.
And it gives the audience a sense of, is he not? And there's even a moment whenever he's showing them around engineering and the criminals are saying like, this would make an amazing battleship. Like what battles we could have at the helm of this ship. And his response isn't, what should be in the past should stay in the past. He says, perhaps those thoughts belong buried in the past. So he's being really, what's the word that I'm thinking of?
Placating?
He's purposefully being neutral enough that he's saying
he's kind of riding the fence.
Yeah, a political, like he's being
diplomatic.
Diplomatic, that's the word. It's not that he's all muscle. He is very intentional about what he's doing. And I don't know, maybe because I know who Worf becomes, this is exciting because it's like an origin moment. Yeah. Watching this for the first time, I would wonder if somebody would have thought like, oh, I wonder, like, this is 20 episodes in, so we have experience with Worf before this moment. But I wonder if there would be some people watching going, I wonder if in the future, Worf is going to be tempted to do something different.
And you would be correct in thinking that it's something that gets his loyalties, unsurprisingly, get revisited and shaken many, many times. He's such a great fucking character. He's so good. He's so interesting. It could be the smartest move that TNG made, was taking the biggest antagonist of TOS and plopping one of them on the bridge. It's such a great move.
And what a big role to give to someone to bring to life and to try to navigate. And, we talk a lot about Brent Spiner.
Yes, the chameleon.
Worf is a fantastic character, and seeing him in Picard was the delight of Picard.
He is the highlight of Picard. He really is. I saw a interview with Michael Dorn, and they said, "Were you ever worried, like 35 years ago, that you were going to be typecast as Worf?" And he said, "Yep. At the time they told me, they've asked me this like throughout my career, and now I just think, what if I'm going to get typecast as something? What an incredible thing to be typecast as." And so much of what Klingons are because of Michael Dorn. He is that role. He's so freaking good, and he wants to play it for the rest of his life. He just wants to keep doing it. So I don't think we've seen the end of Worf. I think there's more of him coming. I hope
so too.
Anything else before we move into some sins? Because this episode has some sins.
It sure does.
Oh, I do love them MacGyvering the weapon together.
Oh, yes.
Yes, and that does my cold open make sense now, the intro.
It's like they have gun nipples in their toe spikes?
Yeah.
Okay.
Gun nipples in their toe spikes. Nice.
All right, Klingons. I see you.
Just the belt pieces become the bits that clonk together, the tubes. I love it so much.
Which is also very Kiss-esque, if you think about it. Just
all
everybody
of their,
goes through,
their
they all have the
outfits.
toe spikes, then you take off,
Lots
there's a
of
nipple
metal.
there.
Yep. I love that so much. Them putting that weapon together, I'm like, you son of a bitch. You had a disruptor on you the whole time. And it's kind of cool knowing that whenever you look at a Klingon, they have a weapon on their
everywhere
outfit. I love it.
That they can put together.
Yeah, it's so fun.
They really do go very easily to be put into, like, not prison, but like the holding cell. So they have a plan.
Get out of this.
Because they're like, this is you plebeians.
Yep. No biggie.
I was surprised. Like, they get out and we're just killing people, including one of the Klingons. I was like, oh, shit.
He's getting murdered. Yep.
That guy, he didn't have a moment where he got to scream,
No. Fuck that guy.
Fuck that guy. I wrote down, this one has no time to be screamed at into the abyss. We gotta go.
This one didn't put up enough of a fight, so he's going to Klingon hell. That's why he doesn't get a scream.
It's also interesting to think, like, to know that these criminals would prefer to fight their way out because that's an honorable death to their warrior mentality, their version of warrior mentality. So it took this small little faction of Klingons that was breaking away from the peaceful treaty situation and giving them the end that they needed to have, which was really clever.
Well, I think every Klingon, pretty much, if you say you could die in an hour and it's guaranteed to be an honorable death, or you can die in 50 years in your sleep, and they will just live their last hour really well.
Yeah.
It's a fascinating view on death.
And I really enjoyed when Picard updates the Klingons that have come for them and says, so we're working on getting them back to you. They are running amok. And the captain says, it is not a disgrace to request our assistance.
Klingons are a lot. He's kind of proud. He's like, yeah, my boys escaped.
Mm-hmm.
Do you want a hand?
Yeah. Picard's response, I think we can handle the situation.
Just there's like a little point of pride. It's like, we'll be good. We'll be fine. I love that.
I also thought it was interesting. I think I remember in the first episode when we visited the warp room for the first time, there was that lift that took them to the second floor, but Worf opts for the ladder because technically it's faster.
Yes. So, which just means that lift is just fucking pointless. Yeah, I love that. I'm also a sucker for the warp core, just like
yeah.
What a great backdrop for a face-off. That's the set design on TNG is, I think it's the best of any show ever put to television.
I think, we're kind of maybe like the last thing that I would want to point out is the verbiage between the final criminal standing and Worf. I did find the quote that I think was really beautiful. Mm-hmm. He says, the criminal tells Worf, my words were dust upon the ground. Your blood has no fire. You are weak like them. I don't care what you look like. You are no Klingon. And Worf responds, perhaps not, and kills him. I was like,
love
fuck!
It.
That's so good.
Yeah. And he's like, I'm comfortable with what I am. It may never be enough for you, but yeah, fuck it. The other one I love in that moment is when he's like, I think the Klingon says something like, I can't believe that you would side with them and not me. And Wolf's just like, believe it, dickhead. Like, this is it. It's just, man, that episode does a great job of telling you the state of affair between the Klingons and the Federation. They're at peace. It could still be fragile even after all this time. There's factions that aren't happy about it. Tells you about the core belief of the Klingons, what Worf is battling with, his backstory. It is such an efficient episode of lore dump of Klingonism. It's so well done. It's
even
so great.
The very last thing when the captain that came, the Klingon captain that came for the criminals, who says, I want to speak with Worf, and he asks Worf, how did they die? And he says they died well. I imagine that this episode also shows that the Federation has a lot to learn about Klingon mentality, because someone might be thinking, they died well, dude, they killed our people. But still, to their culture, that's a way to die well. And there was a piece that brought them. In. Yeah, so it's just a different way of looking at living. And to the Klingon race, living is a battle. And so it's just the verbiage about describing how someone goes through day to day is going to be battlesque. And I think that that's something that the audience probably really enjoyed digging into a little bit. I remember my aunt, who I've talked about all the way back in season 1, all the way back, I think in our episode 0, as the gateway for how I got into Star Trek. It started with, not started with, but my Aunt Brittany was one of the big Star Trek people in my life. And I remember she loved the Klingons so much. I think she actually learned to speak Klingon at one point in time. And she was someone who was very battle-esque and in your face and strong and powerful. And so I can kind of see how sometimes in these creative sci-fi fantasy worlds that there's this race that comes out that's really attractive to people, and to give some credence and some backstory and some depth to the Klingon race, like you said, super smart move. But definitely a sinful episode, but I loved it. So you ready to get into sins?
Oh, I'm ready to get into some sins. I'm so happy you enjoyed it again. I'm doing good, people. This was a good place to start. Okay, with that, let's head to engineering and smash some glass.
Warning. Warp core collapse in 10 seconds.
This is the part of the show where we re-engage our sin brains, remind ourselves that no TV shows without sin, even our beloved Star Trek. Ambassador, take us out.
I have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 things I wrote down.
Oh boy. Let's go.
And some of them are just fun, like the starter one, which is Picard at the very beginning, looking at number 2 saying, I don't like how this feels. And Riker's like, agreed, smells like a trap. Let's go. And I'm like, or don't.
My very first note is, it's a trap. Let's go anyway.
Yeah, or don't go.
or not. That's fine. That is also an option. You could about turn and not render rate.
Creatively, I wonder if you should start at your sins from the top of the episode, or I should start at the top and you should go to their last one. So we go in reverse.
Interesting. Yeah, I like that. Okay. I don't want to mess you up, so I'll go from the bottom up.
Okay.
So my very final note is that glass platform is such a drama queen because like the Klingon gets hit and he hits the deck. Okay, fine. I don't know how dense a Klingon is, but it fucks that glass up so hard.
Quick.
Just so that it can fall through another platform and hit the deck. I'm like,
Quick.
Come on. You are a glass platform around a warp core. You got to be able to take some punishment. And it's just like, I died.
It's got to be all those spikes on the
you got to get some smashing glass. It's not a real death otherwise.
My next one is the moment when the away team beams over to the ship and Riker says, phasers on stun, be ready for anything. And then they put the phasers back in their pocket. Maybe you don't reholster them. Maybe you just beam over with them at the ready. Like you've already got them set to stun. Just beam over where they're already in your hand in case you are in a trap.
My favorite thing is when they, and it's all for drama. And when I say this, you won't be able to unsee it.
Oh no.
They will beam onto a planet or a ship, immediately draw the phaser, draw a tricorder as the first action. And I'm like, you can beam in with that in your hand.
Right.
That's okay. It makes no sense to beam in and draw other than it looks fucking cool.
It does look cool. Yeah. In fact, that's probably one of the standards of how to shoot scenes like this. It's like Star Trek standard. All directors have to adhere to. You cannot beam into a situation with a weapon in hand. Probably quote unquote for reasons, but for it looks
you
cool,
gotta
but
draw.
it doesn't make any sense.
Yeah, and you will see it so much now. My next one was I was just getting a little bit nitpicky. The end of the episode when you've got the feral Klingon is pointing a phaser at a disruptor technically at the warp core, and I was like, beam him away. I know we say this a lot, but as soon as you one of the things about the transporter beams is that they deactivate weapons and they capture the weapon in the middle of the transporter beam. Now maybe they're uncertain about Klingon reflexes and maybe he can sense that he's being beamed away, but beam him away.
It just seems like a really good one. I'll just very quickly hit a couple of mine that are similar, like because the idea was that you couldn't get a good clear shot on him, and I was like, there's nowhere to get a shot on this person who is standing next to the warp core. My God, that's dumb. But then also another one that was for beaming was when they have to escort the prisoners out of that room to go to the beaming pad to get them to the transporter room to get them to the Klingon ship. It's like just teleport them from the prison room. Yeah.
Transporters will always be a sin.
So that'll take off a couple of mine. My next one is the scene where Picard is watching LaForge and everything that LaForge sees, knowing that they are in a really precarious situation, possibly have gone into a trap. Somebody is possibly dying. And then Geordi even sees that there's going to be this breach. They've got under 5 minutes, and Picard is like, "Hey, can you swing around and show me what you see over there now? Whoa, that's cool, man. Can you swing?" So it was
look
this.
At your hand. Whoa, how fucked up is my hand? It's like Picard is on shrooms, and he's just like, "Look at everything. Look at the colors. Hey, Data, fart."
It was the. Let's see if we can see the gas coming out of your ass.
You know, Geordi can see that.
It was a delightful and yet inappropriate juxtaposition of getting to see something in a situation where this should just be on pause. And in the show, Riker calls it out appropriately. Like, hate to be interruptive. So
Riker would be excellent at TV sins. He would be number one at TV sins.
Exactly.
I would do like a smash cut of Picard, like all of the lines where he's like, "Look left, look over there. What's that? Is that how you see? What's going on?" He's like a child in a
it was adorable.
Just a fun factory. It's
super
so
simple.
funny, and it is insane because they're hanging in the neutral zone. Romulans could come at any point. You don't know what's going on. It is like people could be dying on this ship, and Picard is just like, "Lick the wallpaper." It's great. My next one. I'm still stuck in engineering, I'm afraid. The warp core should not be this vulnerable. Tasha's just like, "Hey, one shot at the warp core and we're in trouble here. It's going to destroy the entire ship. Force fields, people. Don't have it on show. Bury it. bury that shit between bulkheads, protect it. Do not let this nuclear fission reactor of warpness be vulnerable to a DIY disruptor that's made out of shoes. Like,
Nipples.
it's nipples. It should not be this vulnerable.
You're not wrong.
Your turn. I'm good.
I think a quick sin for me, and I kind of mentioned it earlier, is when Riker says something about using phasers while they're in that gaseous place, and Data and Geordi are like, that's a bad idea. It's like, how does Riker not know this?
How does he
Moving
not know
on.
that? How information that we could have had yesterday
just
as well.
Like, just Riker. Ding.
Riker, ding. Riker suggests something dumb. I've got. Let's just watch the Klingons in the brig with the doors wide open, but not look at them. So why keep the doors open?
Can't look
just
at them.
stand guard with the back to them. Just let them build a weapon. That's fine.
I had that one written down too.
Mm-hmm.
In the moment when they realize that there's a Klingon that's injured, and Data says, "I'll carry him," and then the Klingon says, like, "No, I will."
Yeah.
And then we cut to their escape. I would have a fun sin where it's like, show robs us of showing us how they managed to get out of that door. Carrying this,
the one that isn't
like,
open all the way.
It's not open all the way. Like they really have to like jump over it, like just pushing him through, and he just flops out onto the deck.
I just imagine they hit his head 6 times, just like bunk, ow, bunk,
I
ow.
know.
I'm alive.
That's why he died, honestly, is the injuries that he continued to sustain as he was ripped through the tiny opening because he refused help.
Yeah, just girders being hit on his head. Like, he died of a concussion, but the concussion happened minutes ago. What did you do to him? I love, and this might be an artifact of transporters, but when Geordi is talking about the hull rupture and how they have 5 minutes to get out, super chillest delivery I've ever heard. And maybe it's because transporters just make things super chill all the time because you can always get out. But he's just like, yeah, we got about 5 minutes. Cool. Let's go. And there is no urgency at all for that 5 minutes until it gets to like 30 seconds.
Then it's urgent. Yeah.
Yeah. Then it's urgent.
I'm definitely would sin that the away team and the Klingons are being beamed back onto the Enterprise and it fails. They reappear in the ship that is blowing up. And then, of course, we zoom out, we see the ship blow up, and then Tasha Yar managed to get them over in the transporter room, and they appear in the same position that they were in when they were casually beaming over. And my sin would be there's no fucking way that none of them were screaming for their life, like falling over, freaking out. They literally saw the ship exploding around them, and they're all standing there super fucking casually, and I just don't believe it for a second.
Like, to
no
attention.
one had their hands up, like protecting their face or turning around. Like none of them were afraid. Yeah,
hovering, like just huddling in a ball on the floor.
One of them would absolutely be shitting themselves in that moment, you know?
Don't worry, the transporter took care of your shitty pants, Riker. That's amazing.
I've only got 2 more.
Okay, I have got a convenient child is inconvenient. This is they're having the standoff, and then the turbo lift just arrives with a child. It's like, here you go, Klingons, have a hostage.
I would sin the moment that the Klingons are getting their tour, I think after they've eaten, and one of the criminal Klingons, they're like walking talking with Worf, essentially. Mm-hmm. But Worf isn't leading the way. And my sin is, how the fuck does that Klingon know anywhere? Yeah. He's walking so confidently.
It's actually over here.
He's turning at the right parts in the, like, this is a maze to them. And he's clearly like the actor that knows which direction he's going. Whereas in reality, he's a Klingon that doesn't know where he is on the Enterprise, and he's walking confidently just somewhere.
This happens a lot when they walk onto ships and they know how to use the panels instantly. And how the programs work. It's like, you don't know how this fucking works.
You don't know shit.
You're a caveman to this technology. That's amazing. This is one of my favorite ones, and it's the universal translator not working when somebody chooses to not use it. So when Worf greets the Klingon captain on the screen, and he says something in Klingon, and then the Klingon captain replies, how does the universal translator know not to translate that part? Universal translators that work based on intent, they're psychic. Anything else? I have one last one.
I have one last one too, and it's one that I've done many, many times, and it has to do with the the communication badge.
Yeah.
At one point, Tasha says Tasha Yar to Captain Picard, and then tells Captain Picard that there's a situation. And then like in the next scene, she just taps it and she's like, Captain, he has a gun pointed at the thingy. And it's like, okay, so can we just be consistent? Do you have to say your name going to someone, or was that just you wanting to flex to those Klingons that you're Tasha Yar? So,
well, and you can also just say computer. Like, you don't need to tap the comm badge when you're on the ship. Tasha was the only one that was continually using her badge. It's funny. And Riker, when he gets beamed in, goes over to the transporter panel, presses a button there, and then says, "Hey, Riker, to the bridge." I was like, "You're not using the computer or your comm badge, you dick." My very last one is, hey, remember when Deanna was in this show?
Oh,
she's not in this episode.
She's not even in this episode. Oh my God, how did I not notice? Oh shit.
She's at home washing her tights.
Amazing.
So good.
Yeah, that's it for me.
Amazing. I'm glad you loved that episode. It's a great introduction to Worf. Next week, should we do another Worf one? Should we do it?
Oh, well, we did have a data-focused season in the in-between seasons last time. I don't mind. I'd actually really like to see a DS9 episode.
Okay.
We haven't really done that on the show yet.
Yeah.
I think it'd be kind of fun to branch out a little bit from what I'm used to watching on Captain's Pod.
Let's do it then. Let's do an episode of DS9. Hit us up on Twitter. Send us an email, captainspod at cinemasins.com. Which Deep Space Nine Worf episode you would like us to cover, and yeah, we'll do that. Let's head to Deep Space Nine next week. I'm excited for that. Well, thank you for listening, everybody. You're all the best. We will see you next week. We will have a live show next week, Friday at 12:30 p.m. CT. We would love to see you on Twitch or the YouTube lives. But until then, I'm Ian, and from me.
Are you trying to is that because I'm dead?
I am
I'm dead. You've peeled my eyes open and you're screaming.
Well, that's shit. Yeah, now it looks like that, doesn't it?
Well, guess what? Too bad. I've locked my door, so you can't get in.
Well, now I'm just screaming like a madman. They're going to be waiting for somebody to turn up and just be like, dude, there's no one coming.
All right, well, we'll just focus on my quote, which is, open your eyes and let the dream take flight.
Nice. Live long in Podsper.
Thanks for listening. Want to connect with the show? Our hailing frequencies are always open through captainspod at cinemasins.com. Like, comment, and subscribe on your podcast player of choice, and be sure to visit cinemasins.com.
Do you know how strange it is to watch your dogs go through the house, go into the kitchen, come back out of the kitchen with things they shouldn't have, knowing that they've gotten into the trash somehow, then watching them carry it through the house into the bedroom, all on security cameras, completely unable to do anything other than click on the little icon that says you can talk through the microphone of your camera, and I'm in a room, not in my house, screaming, "No, bad dog, no, put it down, release,
put it down,
let it go, no."
It's
and there's
so naughty.
Nothing I can do except for just yell at them, and it didn't
do you
work.
think they literally waited until you left to pull this shit?
Oh, yeah.
Yeah. They know that's naughty. They know they're not supposed to go into the kitchen, go through the bin, and be dicks, but they
But the
do
trash
it.
calls to them. It calls to them. It calls to the very instinct of survival.
It does. That's just, be damned with the consequences. I will eat this rotting food or this bit of plastic. It is completely worth it.
Well, and I don't know what it was. All I know is that it was light in color. And on one of the dog's passes, it almost all fit into his mouth because I could see him carrying it through the living room and it was sticking out of his mouth. Like it almost looked like an oversized hot dog bun, or not a hot dog bun, a burger bun. But not the brown, like the darker side, like the bread side, the white kind of side, because it was sticking out circularly from his. And I'm thinking, what was in the trash? I have no idea. Was it plastic? Was it edible? So when I got home, I thought maybe I would find some evidence, but no, I didn't find any evidence.
No evidence at all. It's, whatever it is, it's inside that dog.
Yes. Now I'm on puke watch.
Hey, you remember the end of the Picard finale, and he speaks Shakespeare? And the live chat was like, hey, Deneé, do a podcast about interpreting Shakespeare and what you think the meaning is. Well, we have a new segment for the outtakes, which is Deneé works out what Picard was trying to say with a Shakespeare quote. Here we go. Are you ready?
Oh my God. What are you completely springing on me right now.
Here's the quote from Picard. Sorry, this is from TNG. What a piece of work is man, how noble in reason, how infinite in faculty, in form, in moving, how express and admirable in action, how like an angel in apprehension, how like a god. What does that mean? What was Picard saying?
Picard said this? Are you sure it wasn't Q?
Picard.
All right.
Interesting, but no, Picard said this.
Okay, I think he said it to Q.
However, he is talking to Q. Well done.
That's really interesting because Q deals a lot with like humanity, and so here Picard is like trying to just describe this humanity situation.
Uh-huh.
So,
Good. That's awesome.
I think that's pretty much all I need to talk about to show how really amazing I am at this new segment.
Yeah, I'm impressed. He is talking to Q, and that's from Hamlet. And Hamlet is being ironic and saying that humans are actually dumbasses. And Picard is using it sincerely to prove to Q that humans are great. There's Shakespeare Corner with Ian and Deneé.
I don't know that I like that Picard is calling us how like a god we are. I think that's a little tricky.
Yeah, I think it's a bit exaggerated because that's Q's response. He's like, "You jackass, can you hear yourself right now? You sound
Yeah.
like a dick." And he's like, "We're not there yet, but I think we're more like that than what you think we are, Q, which is dick."
Dicks.
Captain's Pod, stardate 805523.3. I say that more strangely every week. Welcome aboard the Starship's Enterprise, and thank you for joining us as we take a brief shore leave from the world of CinemaSins to explore the universe of Star Trek. I'm your Captain Ian Whittington, and a dog just jumped onto the sofa beside me and started licking me, and I didn't know there was even a dog in this room.
It's gonna be a good show. Yeah, this is a different kind of show. Not only are we not doing a live show on today's recording, but we're actually at my house, which you guys usually hear my voice from my house anyway. That's my own studio. But due to conflict in recording schedules, Ian had nowhere to record his part of the studio recording today. So he's at my house also, live from another room where, surprise, my dogs are as well.
Surprise! Can you take a screenshot? Captain's Pod, stardate
1, 2. You can't even start the fucking show.
There's coffee just in my throat right now that said, "Hello." Try again.
Oh
Take
my
3.
god.
Da 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 da. Ba, ba.